There was another part of that email which was important, which was that it was so-called for Neville, and that it named another journalist in that email. And that second part, that importance, was not described to me in any detail or at all, and it was not described as the for Neville email. And I want to be very clear, no documents were shown to me at that meeting or given to me at that meeting or prior.
So it is now your position that you were made aware of the existence of an email that was extremely damaging to your defence, that nobody else was involved?
Yes, and I think as I testified earlier in the summer to this committee, I was made aware that there was evidence that the transcript existed and that it was on behalf of the News of the World. It's dual importance, if you will, that it was the for Neville email, that it also was perhaps the beginning of suspicion that other individuals were involved at the News of the World, was not described to me, and the email was not shown to me either. I want to be very, very clear, and let me say this again. The so-called for Neville email, now referred to as the for Neville email, but not then referred to as the for Neville email, was mentioned to me as evidence that was important with respect to it being a transcript of a voicemail interception that came through that proved that it was on behalf of the News of the World. It was not shown to me, nor was it discussed with me its other feature, that it was for Neville and that it might indicate wider spread knowledge or wider spread activities of phone hacking. It was important for two reasons. It was the evidence that was fatal to the case, unquote, but it was also evidence that might have, in conjunction with leading counsel's opinion, in conjunction with the appropriate transparency that I would have liked in retrospect to have had, led to further investigations and moving forward on a different footing.
And you're seriously asking me to accept that there was no mention that Newsgroup newspapers had actively made use of a large number of extremely private voicemails from Taylor's telephone, as evidenced in Crone's memo?
It was only told to me that there were transcripts of voicemails there. That reference in the those documents weren't shown to me that you're referring to, nor the way that they discussed it.
And there was no mention of a number of Newsgroup journalists identified by Mr. Crone at News of the World and the Sun who were obtaining access to information illegally.
No.
I need to tell you that I've met Neville Thirlbeck, and although the meeting was supposed to be in confidence, I think there is a public interest in revealing what he said to me. And I know you've not seen this yet. I will make it available to you. He said to me, "No one asked of Crone before you went to see James Murdoch, did you discuss what your strategy with him would be or with anyone else? He discussed the strategy with me at one point. What he did was this. Just before he went to see Murdoch and to clear the funds and to say we've got to settle, he had to speak to me about what the transcript for Neville was all about. Neville, we've got a problem because of this. What's this all about?"
So who is this, Tom?
This is Neville Thirlbeck.
Is this Colin Myler who's talking to?
This is Neville Thirlbeck talking to Tom Crone.
Tom Crone.
I looked at it. I don't know, Tom. I never received it. I don't know. I'm looking at it and saying, clearly it's hacked. Who is it? You'd better speak to X. Somebody must have asked X to do this. I mean, X was asked to do so many of these by people on the news desk at the time. He would know. He would have to be pretty dumb not to know. So Tom comes to me with, and I give him a full explanation. Tom, this had nothing to do with me. We discussed things. Right, fine. He said, however, this shows that this had gone through the office. It's gone through the office. It's gone through X, through his computer in the office. So clearly News International are culpable, and we're going to have to settle. And I'm going to have to show this to James Murdoch. The reason I can remember him saying that was because I said to him, please, do you have to show him this? Because he's going to assume the worst of me, and he's going to think it's all to do with me. Is there any way we can get round this? And he said to me, Nev, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to show him this because it's the only reason why we're having to settle. So was it Mr. Crone, a respected lawyer and in-house legal advisor for many years?
Who did what?
Who misled this committee?
As I said to you, as I wrote to you and I issued a public statement, certainly in the evidence that they gave to you in 2011, with respect to my knowledge, I thought it was inconsistent and not right, and I dispute it vigorously.
So you think Mr. Crone misled us?
That it follows that I did, yes.
And so do you think Mr. Myler misled us as well?
I believe their testimony was misleading, and I dispute it.
Is it not, in fact, the case, though, that Mr. Crone instructed Farrers, News International's solicitors, as recently as May 2010, to look into the personal relationship that may or may not have existed between Mr. Lewis and the lawyer Charlotte Harris, also representing victims of phone hacking?
I can say that certain Mr. Crone and another News of the World employee at the time did engage certain private investigators to the details around it. I'm not sure as you describe it, but to surveil plaintiffs' lawyers. And I want to say for the record, it is appalling. It is something I would never condone, and the company should never condone. And it was shocking when I found it out, and it's just unacceptable.
When did you discover that the lawyers of plaintiffs had been put under surveillance by News International?
Very recently, the last few weeks, and I think it's important to say that that was absolutely not a corporate activity that was condoned, and it's absolutely not appropriate. And it's Mr. Crone and the other person did not do that with any authority or knowledge by me, and I would never condone that behavior.